下一个讲者特别介绍我们 May Bear 他是我们 Ohio 州的农民他同时是 Ohio 州玉米小麦协会的监事，同时也是美国谷物协会在这个中东亚跟东南亚区的一个咨询委员。他很年轻，他其实在2019年回到他的家庭农场来从事，但是他也是家族整个家族在这个农业上面有很多的深耕。我们欢迎 Nate please Nate on the stage for a speech. Thank you.
I'm going to follow kind of Jim's lead here and kind of walk around if that's okay with everyone. Good morning. It's such an honor to be here with you guys today. Anytime we get to talk about family and farm, the things we love, we need to take advantage of it. Go ahead and do next slide, please. So this is kind of our operation. Our farming in the U.S. come in all varies in sizes, shapes, and everything. But we're a little bit smaller than Jim, but have just as much pride. So here, before we go on to the next slide, I want to point out one thing here. So we have some tree lines here, and you'll notice this grass. It might show up on the smaller slides or screens to the side here, but I'm going to talk about this grass area later on. Next slide. I wouldn't be able to be here today unless it was for the support of my family. They always pick up the slack when we kind of have to come and spend time with you folks. My wife, Megan, of 13 years, our daughter, Riley, and we have our son, Micah. Our next son is Declan, and then Bennett, he's our youngest. So we have a full house, lots of energy, but it's always fun. Next slide. So here are some pictures from around home for us. This is on top of one of our grain bins, just kind of looking out over some of our fields. You can see that we're in the middle of wheat harvest. Here we got some woods. This is our grain bin site. We're on top of one of our bins. This is our cattle operation that we do. We have, I'll talk a little bit more. And then the picture here is my help for the day during wheat harvest. This was actually in the same time, same day, so our harvesting cab was very full. I had 2 on the seat beside me, and I had 2 on the floor. So obviously it's a big day, and you can still see that we need nap time during it, so it provides a good opportunity. All right, next slide. I am the 6th generation on our farm. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay. Our calf and cattle operation are all registered Murray Grey animals. We raise those for seed stock to sell to other producers, as well as freezer beef. Here's my son helping clean out the hay feeder. In the middle picture is my father. He still farms with me every day. I'm very grateful for that. And then there's a picture of me carrying a sick calf to the barn. Next slide, please. So technology. It continues to evolve every single day. Some farms use more than others. One of the main technology uses that we use on our farm is GPS. We use GPS auto steer for just about everything, whether it's in the combine, for steering, sprayer, applying fertilizer, everything is used. Soil samples, we use that. GPS allows us to be more efficient with our not only nutrients, our time, and path. So allowing GPS allows us to maintain the same paths of travel in the field, reducing compaction. In the sprayer, it allows us to use less chemicals because we don't have the overlap. When we're applying fertilizer, it allows us to use less fertilizer because we don't have the overlap. It is critical. Our soil tests, we are on 1.25 acres, so a half-acre grid samplings. That is all GPS system. And so we overlay the soil sample testing results with our yield harvest data. And Jim had a really good picture of a yield harvest map there. And then we can use that to build not only our planting prescriptions of where we should put how much seed per area of the field, but it also calls for then how much fertilizer do we need in what areas of the field. Next slide, please. So some interesting facts about Ohio corn. So just like kind of Jim alluded to, weather is king. You can do all the right things, but if rain doesn't happen or you get too much, you gotta just roll with the punches. So the background picture is our grain setup. On average, Ohio receives a little over 992 millimeters of rain per year. So the 2024 season started out fairly average. For April, May, and June, we are just a little bit above the average in terms of precipitation. And at first glance, you wouldn't think that's a big deal, but timing's everything. So we typically try to plant in early May, but this year, based on the timing of the rains, we weren't able to get our corn crop in until June. A lot of times that's not a good thing, but you got to do what you got to do. Then we go into kind of more of the growing season, where we go from July to October. I kind of took those months. Typically, we have around 350 millimeters of rain. This year, we only had about 190. My dad and I were out in our cornfields checking ears and kind of estimating where we were going to be for harvest in August. And during that harvest walkthrough, it wasn't really a good day. We thought our yield was probably going to be 50% of average. And I'll get into later what it ended up being. Our monthly range of temperature is less severe than Jim. We still see some cold temperatures, usually averages of negative 3.5 degrees Celsius January. We're typically, July can be a little bit hotter, but seasonal average is 23 degrees Celsius. Ohio harvested just shy of 1.3 million hectares of corn this year and produced almost 14.9 metric tons. Next slide, please. So corn yields. Alex did a great job of kind of going through this, so I won't repeat much of that, but you can kind of see our yield trend. So I have 2013 on here, but I also have 2024, so this year. So the 2013 US was 9.9 metric tons per hectare. We finished up 24, I think around just shy of 11.5 metric tons. Ohio this year, we were 11.6. In 2013, we were at 10.9. On our farm, our yields this year, our corn was only down 23%, so much better than what we were thinking, 50% down. We were very blessed with some later rains and then no-tilling. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I think conserves some energy, but also seed genetics have improved, and we'll talk about that. Our bean yield was down 20% based on average, and our wheat yield was down 16%. I think a lot of the contributors to those was one, the late planting, weather conditions, kind of all played a role. Next slide, please. So growing biotech products. Biotechnology in our seed genetics is a tool that we really utilize in our toolbox. There's a lot of things that kind of go into making a decision for what we're going to plant, when we're going to plant. But biotech has really helped us not only in our conservation journey, but it's allowed us to be able to produce more of a stable supply per hectare and more consistent. The seed genetics are getting better and better in terms of disease resistance, drought resistance, and like I kind of alluded to, this biotechnology has allowed us to kind of go down this no-till path, where before you'd have to do more tillage to kind of get weeds under control. Now we have some other options. So the big decision, what to plant. There's lots of factors that go on this. Cost of production, and this varies from farm to farm, practices to practices. Cost of inputs varies. Typically the sooner you buy them, the cheaper they are. The closer you get to a growing season, the more expensive they get. On our farm, I had the pleasure of just doing this before I came. So I was looking at buying inputs for next year. So for 2025 compared to last year, chemicals are down about 18% on average, give or take, and then fertilizers are down about 4%. The next thing that goes into what are we going to plant is future pricing. So while it's great chemicals and fertilizers are down, it's also expected, though, markets are going to be down. Expectations when I did this was corn was going to be down about 5%, soybeans down about 7.5%. And the last thing that kind of contributes to what are we going to plant is just planting conditions. And unfortunately, that one you just got to wait till we get closer. And do we need to switch to a different crop? And we'll just have to wait and see what that brings. So one picture here, and this one I should have pointed out sooner with the picture with my dad, but this one you can see down here in the corn plant. This was, I think, in August here, but you can see kind of some residue down here in our no-till. So we usually no-till our corn as much as we can. So sustainability best practices. Probably one of the easiest things that is used is fertilizer stabilization. The majority, a big Big one for us is nitrogen stabilization. So we use that no matter what kind of source of nitrogen we're using. That allows us to save money because it allows the product to stay in the field and be plant available when we need it and the plant needs it, and not being leached away. Another thing we do is we try to put the fertilizer in the soil next to the plant when it's needed. Another option we do is equipment fuel efficiency. And just one example of this that we do is, so this is our corn planting our setup machinery here. So the first year that we had this, I was trying to learn how to operate it. And so I really didn't think too much about how much throttle or how hard to run the engine. I was worrying about, is the plant getting in the ground correctly? Am I going the right speed? Is the fertilizer getting in there? So the first couple years we did this, it was burning about 1.25 gallons per acre to put an acre of corn out. Well, after talking to some friends and looking at the torque curves of the tractor we were using, I was able to drop the engine by about 300 RPMs, and that saved a half a gallon an acre to put that corn crop out. So why it's not, when you look at it from a grand scheme of things, you're like a half gallon an acre is not a huge deal, but every cost saving measure we can do is huge, not only for our bottom line, but for the environment. So you'll see here the cover crop that we have is a rye mix here. This is a cereal rye. In our planting, on our corn planter, this tank here is our Earn-Furrow tank. So we'll supply about 3 gallons an acre of fertilizer right on top of the seed as we're planting. Then we come through in this tank back here, this blue one, that has 2x2. So then we're placing some other fertilizer 2 inches away from the seed and 2 inches into the ground. So as that corn crop grows, the roots can kind of, when it gets big enough, tie into those fertilizer and those products that we put there. So conservation. Conservation is a huge deal for us. Some of the things that we do is we try to no-till anything we can. We use cover crops anytime we can, grass waterways, and buffer areas. So this buffer area, if you remember that first picture I showed, I said, see this grass around the trees? So that was some of the buffer areas. And why do we do buffer areas? This is a program that we take that area, usually around woods or fence rows, where the crop is competing for not only sunlight, but water, so it doesn't produce as well. So we put it in these buffer areas, this grass program. It builds soil health, it produces a wildlife habitat, and so it's a win-win all the way around. Grass waterways. We install these grass waterways, instead of having a narrow channel where you get a heavy rain, where it erodes in your field, we install these grass waterways in kind of the lower areas where we can expand the channel, make it wider and flatter, where it's still sloped, but then it goes through, then limits the soil erosion by a lot. Cover crops, we usually do a mix ahead of our soybeans of cereal rye. Corn, we're still trying to figure out the sweet spot of what mix to use. And then after wheat, we'll do either a double crop soybean or cover crop, depending on the economics at the time. Here is a picture of no-till planting beans into a standing rye field. We try to plant green as much as we can. The picture at the bottom there, your left, shows us pulling out of the field. And so we still have some old tractors that we use, and you can see that's an older one there, but we keep those as backups because you never know when the new stuff might go down. You need to rely on an oldie but a goodie. And so, but anyways, this picture shows we're coming out of the rye, and if you wait till the rye is headed out, a lot of times you can roll that rye down, and you can kind of see here how the tractor tires will kind of make those paths. But then once that rye is rolled down, if it's mature enough, it'll kill it, and it doesn't need any chemicals to kill it. So challenges. Farming, along with everything, has a set of challenges. Inflation, we're still battling. Interest rates, we're still battling. Those are both high. And weather. We never know about weather. But why do I put these kind of two pictures up? These are some pictures from a few years ago of my older two kids. And sometimes challenges, we get really frustrated. We can't control it. And that's how we kind of feel on the inside. We just want to go crazy. But it's important to remember why we're doing what we're doing. And for me, the reason why we do what we do is for the next generation. Next slide, please. So successes. Nothing is sweeter than after those challenges, you come together at the end of the year, and it's a winning just a winning formula. Exports, we couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity to continue to partner with you folks and our other partners around the world. We really appreciate everything you guys do for us. It doesn't go unnoticed. Technology will continue to increase and continue to help push us to become better and better at what we do. Future ethanol demand as a low-carbon alternative to fossil fuels, I hope that stays as such a bright star and catalyst for years to come. And yield, the yield improvements will continue to improve not only through genetics, but as we as farmers continue to improve our practices. And so I like this picture. It's roughly about the same time frame, but success is so much better when we work together to achieve it. So here's a picture of my dad and my youngest, and they're putting a cover crop out in our wheat field. And it shows the American farmer is always going to be there. We want to develop a safe, sustainable product, not only for our families, but to share it with all of our customers. And we're going to be there to meet the challenges. And just for the sake of time, as Jim said, we'll take questions during the panel discussion. Thank you.
非常谢谢Nate的演讲啊，非常精彩。